welcome back to our channel. Today, we will dive into the chilling case of the Stoneman serial killer, a haunting chapter in India's crime history that still remains unsolved. Before we begin, if you're interested in true crime and the complexities of criminal psychology, please make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on our content. In the mid-1980s, the streets of Kolkata and Mumbai were faced with gruesome killings which left the police lost and the public terrified. The killer, who came to be known as the Stoneman, targeted unsuspecting victims who were among the most vulnerable of society, the homeless civilians. The modus operandi was as gruesome as it was simplistic. The victims, often asleep on pavements or streets, were brutally bludgeoned to death using large stones, leaving behind scenes of horror and despair. This macabre method both bewildered and terrified authorities, setting the stage for an investigation that would seem to never meet its end. The killings of Bombay. Beginning in 1985, 12 innocent victims were murdered in Bombay, a city now known as Mumbai. These murders occurred during a 2-year period, primarily in King's Circle and Son. The killer's motive and method remained a mystery to the police force, but from what they knew, it was both simple but no less inhumane. The Stoneman would find an unarmed victim who would be sleeping in the quiet city streets, in a place that would be dimly lit. Soon their lives would be taken from them as their heads get crushed by a stone that was believed to have weighed around 30 kilograms and more. As the victims were homeless and often people who slept alone, their deaths sadly went unnoticed, and they could not be identified as they had no connections to others. The tragic truth that remains prevalent in society internationally even till today is the fact that homeless victims are not prioritized the same way other members of society are. Many believe that the reason the Stoneman could have gone after homeless people may be because it would not stir much of a reaction from authorities. And sadly, that is what happened. The police force weren't remotely worried until the murders became more than a handful. As the victims increased and the panic spread, the police launched an investigation, trying to connect dots and understand the killer's motive. As the victims were mostly homeless people who were unarmed with no stable location, it was even more difficult to identify patterns and motives. The police felt they were going nowhere, and eventually there was one witness. A waiter who was sleeping rough had managed to successfully escape the Stoneman and went to inform the police. However, the police were not able to find out what they already didn't know. The waiter was attacked by the Stoneman in an area that was poorly lit and whilst he was asleep, so he was not able to see the attacker properly. The Stoneman remained at large in the absence of new evidence. Many people thought the Stoneman was also responsible for another murder that occurred shortly. A ragpicker was hacked to death. However, they were unable to link the events together because of a lack of evidence. And just like that, in the middle of 1988, the Stoneman's murders had stopped. The killings of Calcutta. 1989 saw the horrifying murders continue in Calcutta, which is now known as Kolkata. Given the lack of evidence, it is difficult to conclude with certainty whether the murderer in Calcutta is the same Stoneman from Delhi. However, it is important to note that the killings didn't start in Calcutta until after they ceased in Bombay, but we can't be sure if it was a coincidence or if this is a sign of a lead. Furthermore, the weapon used in these murders and the fact that the victims were living on the streets in dimly lighted places were the factors that suggested that the same person was responsible for all of these killings. Certainly, there is a high likelihood that it is the same murderer, but again, this cannot be confirmed and it could have been a copycat killer. In the 6 months that followed the first victim's death in June 1989, Calcutta saw a total of 12 other killings of innocent people. All of these victims were living on the streets alone. Most of the murders took place close to Howrah Bridge. Since they were all murdered with heavy stones dropped on them, the police had the theory that the killer must have been a tall man who was built strongly enough to be able to handle such weight. However, this theory cannot be confirmed as there were no sufficient testimonies or physical descriptions. The police had a lack of options on how to proceed with this case, and as a result they increased their presence in the cities. Additionally, they arrested some men who they deemed suspicious. However, with a lack of evidence, they were let go. The killings, however, did stop after the suspected individuals were apprehended. Sadly, the crimes were not further investigated and they remain a mystery. As we conclude this short dive into the chilling case of the Stoneman serial killer, we're left with more questions than answers. The true identity of the killer, their motives, and the possibility of multiple culprits remain hauntingly unclear. The Stoneman case stands as a reminder that even decades later, some mysteries may never be fully unraveled. If you found this video intriguing, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your fellow true crime enthusiasts. Subscribe to our channel for more captivating content like this. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe. Remember, the truth is often stranger than fiction.